In a late night or late evening session, so either still on April the 1st or already on the wee hours of April the 2nd, 2019, the British House of Commons rejected all the 4 Brexit deal alternatives, which then means that probably Britain will exit the European Union without a formal deal on April the 12th, 2019. And this is seen as a major defeat for the current British Prime Minister, Theresa May. She already has at least indirectly indicated that she is ready to resign, but she has not set a date. It is possible that she will be forced out, just as the first female British Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, was forced out by a caucus or parliamentary group, more specifically, of course, House of Commons group revolt. Although technically, Margaret Thatcher was not voted out of office by her caucus. She did win the first vote back in late November 1990. However, because all of her cabinet colleagues suggested to her, at least one of them bluntly and directly, Kenneth Clarke, that she would lose the second ballot should she stand in the second ballot. She then decided, partly probably in the interests of party unity and perhaps partly in order to have a more dignified exit from office, to then announce her resignation. The irony was that after her decision to leave, in the vote that was held in the British Conservative Party's caucus, her successor, John Major, received a fewer votes than she had received on the first ballot. 185 votes. He would have needed 187 in order to have a majority of the then 372 Conservative members of the British House of Commons, while Thatcher had, facing only Michael Heseltine, received 204 votes, which was tantalizingly close to the 208 votes she would have needed to avoid a second ballot. But now, Theresa May is in a much worse situation because, at least outwardly, back in 1990, the British national unity was clearly firmer than it is now. Britain's exit from the European Union may well encourage and galvanize many Scottish nationalists who are bent on working tirelessly for that constituent countries or regions' full independence from Britain, to organize a second independence referendum. And even if that did not pass or that did not happen, Britain is politically in a disarray. Many voters are fed up with the two mainstream political parties, and then the third one as well. So the Conservatives, the Labourites, and the Liberal Democrats, and indeed several Labour and some Conservative members of the House of Commons have already formed the so-called independent group, have resigned from their parties and want to register that party. And perhaps the United Kingdom Independence Party could, in a snap election, win additional votes, although because of the electoral system, it is unlikely to win more than a handful of seats. One option, of course, would be that Prime Minister May asked Queen Elizabeth II to dissolve the House of Commons and call a snap general election so that the voters could decide which political party or coalition could govern Britain at the national level. Another option would be that she resigned voluntarily or forced by the circumstances, and then let her party's parliamentary group choose her successor. Or she would then, in the third option, schedule a vote and then would basically indicate that unless she wins the first ballot, she resigns. The problem is that there is no clear front-runner to succeed Theresa May, and then such a sudden departure of the prime minister and leader would make it challenging to form a new cabinet, and especially to try to win back those voters whom the British Conservatives have already lost since the 2017 election. So since the British Conservatives have been, at least since the late 1980s and early 1990s, divided over the so-called European issue, in other words, the extent to which they can support the political, economic, social, and even military integration of now most of European countries who belong to the European Union. It is difficult to find a compromise candidate who could reunite the party. And then there is the classic, that dispute since the 1970s between the more hardline right-wing conservatives as far as the socio-economic policies are concerned, and then the more centrist or even left-leaning conservatives, the so-called one nation conservatives, who are in favor of income redistribution and social programs to make the gap, to reduce the gap between the rich and the poor Britons, and who are not so keen on privatizing industries or companies, as are the more right-wing conservatives, who are socially liberal when it comes to, for example, sexual morality, such as former Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson, who once said, or was quoted as saying, that he could not understand what the fuss was all about regarding the same-sex marriages. So whoever succeeds Prime Minister May will have a very difficult task. Even though there's no official civil war in Britain, the country is in a deep state of disunity. Even if it stayed together, at least as the least of all evil or imperfect alternatives, it would probably have to become a more decentralized country, possibly even a federation of sorts. And since some of Scotland's nationalists would favor, with the remainder of Britain, a kind of relationship that exists now between the European Union and its member states, it would be similar to the so-called sovereignty association option advocated by a significant number of the Quebec nationalists and sovereigntists in Canada. So let us go to the actual news. Tom Peck, Naked Commons protesters spoke for all of us. Jenny Eclair, my tips for distracting yourself from the Brexit nightmare. May calls cabinet lock-in as election threat grows. Members of Parliament reject all plans but customs union and final say come close. So customs union would have been, or would be, a kind of compromise where through a bilateral agreement, Britain would have some kind of most favored nation status with the remaining member states of the European Union without belonging to the Union anymore. MPs failed to agree on alternative Brexit plan, increasing risk of crashing out of EU. According to at least some economists, that would significantly reduce Britain's economic growth and could even spark a short-term recession. MP resigns, Tory whip seconds after Brexit votes. Nude protesters storm Commons public gallery as MPs debate Brexit. Andrew Grice, Parliament deadlock puts soft Brexit at risk as Bowles adds some drama. So those were news headlines from the Independent newspaper, then the Guardian. Brexit deadlock continues as MPs fail to find compromise. Nick Bowles, Conservative MP, quits party after his soft Brexit plan fails. Second round, how each MP voted in the indicative votes. Commons deadlock, soft Brexiters blame referendum supporters. Then the Daily Mail. Top Mandarin's no deal warning, doomsday leaked, letter predicts food prices up 10%, police unable to protect the public, direct rule in Ulster, meaning Northern Ireland, and a worse recession than 2008, ahead of the Prime Minister's 5-hour cabinet showdown today. Then, the Daily Mirror. The Brexit shambles continues as MPs reject all alternatives yet again ahead of Theresa May's crunch cabinet meeting today. The Prime Minister will be meeting her deeply divided top team to see if there's any way forward anyone can actually agree on. And the Times, the ups and downs of Downing Street. MPs reject Brexit plans again in boost for May. Boost? Really? Is there a way forward for the government? Why did MPs fail to reach any kind of consensus last night? In part because the Commons is itself deeply divided, not just between hard and soft Brexiteers, but between soft Brexiteers and those who want a second referendum. In the event last night, not enough MPs were prepared to compromise. And one problem, of course, is that even the possible political beneficiary from this disarray in the Conservative ranks, the Labour Party's leader Jeremy Corbyn, is not particularly popular among the British voters, who are, like many, if not most other Western voters, increasingly critical, skeptical, and cynical about politics as usual. So even if he was able to win a workable majority, more than just 10 seats or so in the House of Commons, he still would face a difficult task of proving to those Britons who either voted for him or would have voted for him with reservations, or then who had voted for other parties or independents, that he would be the right man to lead Britain back to anything resembling a national unity and business as usual, socially and politically, economically, culturally, and so forth.